This video is sponsored by Renderhub. Stick around to find an amazing platform where you can find high quality asset resources that you can use for your creations. So it's another time of the year and the folks at Adobe are leapfrogging into the future of creative tools with a new set of announcements and teasers of projects and tools coming to Adobe. As Adobe Sensei, which is Adobe's codename for their generative AI, now currently called Firefly for their video and image generation tools, is getting wilder and even more useful as the folks at Adobe continue to push the bounds of what is possible with Adobe tools, which has led to more creative choices. And with the projects demoed this year at Adobe Max, they are bringing more pizza and more possibilities to creators. And with that said, let's take a look at the cool set of projects that you can now expect to see in Adobe set of tools. Project Turnstile is one impressive project that I sincerely love. So last year, the folks at Adobe did tease a very interesting tool which is called Project Turntable. And the idea behind Project Turntable is for those working with Adobe Illustrator to make a simple doodle of a character, maybe from a side reference, and then convert that to a 360 model which they can rotate directly inside Adobe but still retain the features, functions, and fidelity of a simple illustrated image. And that same feature is now coming to Photoshop, and in this case, this now converts literally any image you have inside of Photoshop to 3D. And how this works is extremely easy. All you need to do is have the object selected, and you can now convert a flat 2D object or layer into a pseudo 3D layer. And you can rotate, reposition while maintaining lighting and also texture. At the same time, you can play with the field of view of that particular image without distorting the background image. You can position this however you want with the background image and click on the upscale button. And with the upscale button, this is going to process the entire thing and upscale it to the highest quality there is. More so, you can use the brand new harmonize tool that now currently exists with Adobe Photoshop to harmonize the image with the background itself. And you can see with what we have with the 2D image and the now new 3D image that things are looking really good. And there's a whole lot of use case for this. There are certain situations where you like to match another image with another one, but then you don't have the right perspective. And this is going to mitigate all of that by allowing you to convert your simple 2D layer into 3D. And then you can position this however you want, upscale, harmonize, and get the right result that you're going for. And this is amazing. Similar to Project Harmonize from last year, this year we have Project Light Touch, and Project Light Touch comes in 3 different modes. The first one is Change Light, and with the Change Light feature, you can select any light element in your scene and use that to relight the scene. And this is very brilliant as you can dictate the light element and relight the scene and also control the light intensity. So in various cases, you might want to see what your scene looks like in the night, in the daytime, or with the lights turned on. This is definitely going to help you get that done. The second mode, which is available with Project Light Touch, is the diffuse light. So in various instances, you might have light peeking through a surface, and in this case, we do have a man putting on a sun hat. Of course, we see hat shadows, and in several instances, you might want to just reduce the intensity of the shadows or possibly get rid of the whole sun peeking through, and that is where the diffuse light with Project Light Touch comes in handy. And with that, you can process the image and automatically it is going to relight the overall image. And for what it is, you can also use the adjustment slider and adjust the light effect on the image itself. And finally, we have spatial lighting. And for spatial lighting, this is really cool, especially if you want to relight an image. So this uses a virtual lighting, and you can simply use this to move light across various parts of your scene. Once you have an image processed with this, you do have the virtual light lighting your overall scene, and this will relight your scene spatially. And this can also be used to relight various scenes. And the cool thing with this as well is you can choose to change the color of the light itself and also transform that however you want. In this case, this whole example deals with an omni light, and hopefully in subsequent updates, we might be seeing various forms of light make their way to this particular project. And with lots of generative tools coming to Adobe, it just makes a lot of sense to see that we are getting something that is even better. And that is Project Trace Erase. So by default, how you get things out of your scene has to do with either you selecting, using Content Aware Fill. With the new generative tool, you can now do Generative Fill, and there's also a nice new remove tool, which is now available. And as good as this sounds, in most cases, you might either need a stamp tool to complement some parts, or you might end up using a healing brush to actually make some things not look like they existed there before. And this is where the Project Trace series actually knocks all of these previous technologies out of the pack. So in a case like this where we have a vehicle and we do have a reflection underneath, with Project Trace series, all you need to do is have the vehicle selected, and automatically this would erase the vehicle and also erase the vehicle's reflection on the puddle, retaining every single detail that this image has. This is a complex context-based tool which understands the relationship of an object with its environment. So in a second example which we have here, we have an image of a lady taking a walk in the night, and you can see her shadows is casting, a reflection of her is also casting, and with Project Trace series, all we need to do is select the lady, and even without selecting all of her, the tool understands this context and will erase the lady, the reflection, and the shadows. And this is just one of those tools that brings that quality of life to Photoshop. There's just a ton of things that you can do with this, which includes cleaning out several shots. So in several cases, you get to take a shot and you notice lens flares and all of that. These can definitely clean that up. So all you need to do is have the sun selected, and it's going to understand that the sun produces this lens flare, and it will go ahead and clean it up. You want to erase a jet ski rider, it understands that the jet ski produces the wave on the water and understands the part which this jet ski plays and cleans that up entirely. Again, this understands the context and literally understands what you want, and erases every single trace that involves the object that you're cleaning out from the photo. So there's just a lot of use cases, and I see a lot of people saving so much time and working with this. Similar to Project Trace series, we've got Project Frame Forward. And Project Frame Forward is the video equivalent of what we have with Project Trace Erase. As with this, you can literally erase anything from any shot, and all you need to do is to have the main video loaded, and you can extract the frames. Now once you have these frames extracted, you can easily go over to Photoshop and use the Trace Erase feature and get rid of either the character or the object, and this will do a wonderful job of erasing the character or the object and anything that leaves a trace that it once existed in that image. And once you're done with that, you can simply have that reloaded into Project Frame Forward, and once you have all that going, you can now click on the forward edit, and this is automatically going to take a look at the edited image and propagate that result all through the entire footage. And this is wild. Having a video that has to do with something as complex as a smoke, a drifting vehicle, and all that, trying to remove even the simplest of things can be very difficult to track or even remove. And with this tool, you can either use the paintbrush feature to simply edit, select, and trace erase the object, as this also uses the back-end Photoshop API to actually get this going. And with this, you can now propagate the entire scene and get a clean plate that you can use. I mean, it doesn't get better than this. Just thinking about how much time it's going to cost for you to be able to mask this entire thing or even track this shot to remove all of these is something that a single click of a button can now resolve. And of course, you can also add stuff to your scene if this is something that you want. So in an example like this, where we would like to throw in a puddle within our scene, we can also use the brush to simply paint around where we would like the puddle to be, put a prompt that we want this to happen, and we can use the Gen fill that also calls from Photoshop Generative fill to create that puddle. And once we have this ready, we can also go ahead and propagate the entire shot, and you can see that this understands how reflections work, and you can see how it handles all of this. So there is a whole lot of examples that these can come in super handy for, and I think this would be a wonderful tool to see in tools like Premiere Pro or even After Effects, as these would match for VFX stuff and also work fantastically for video editing as well. So instead of just cleaning one shot, you can simply use this tool to clean out any of the distractions and modify the overall look easily. So we all know that Photoshop is really good when it comes to selecting objects, and it has an amazing way of selecting objects in different forms. And in certain cases, you might just want to select a specific element that has to do with a particular kind of texture. And that is where Project Surface Swap comes in, as Project Surface Swap allows you to select an image with a unified or similar texture. And contrary to what you have with color range, this seems to combine object select alongside color range to select the surface that you want. And with that, you can now proceed to change the color of that image. and that is really good. So this is definitely going to save a lot of time of lassoing, using pen to do a lot of selection, and allow creators to focus more on making the work that they want. Another interesting use case, you can see that we have very similar textures across the image, but this understands that the image that needs to be selected is the table, and then it proceeds to select it regardless of intersecting object. And of course, with that, you can simply load textures and use those textures to apply automatically. No need for perspective matching and all that. This does all of that automatically. And Project Swap is of course one cool tool that I think a lot of people working with Photoshop would use for almost their day-to-day activity. And this works for literally anything. As far as it's a surface that simply has a unified pattern across, this would understand it and actually select it, and you can replace the surface, mix and match with other stuff, and do amazing things with it. And this is one feature that I see coming to the next release of Photoshop. One amazing project that folks at Adobe actually showed off this year is Project New Depth. Initially, when the whole idea of New Depth was being talked about, it sort of made us think about some other projects that they've done before, which includes Project Made in the Shade, which allows you to simply move objects from one point to another without the need of you actually masking. This just understands how to cast shadows. And again, it also brought us to think about another cool project that they've done before, which is Project Compose, which of course allows you to compose literally anything by just simply making markers and placing these things in your scene. And initially, this was what we thought was making a comeback. You being able to just move objects from one point, moving it across another object, and this automatically understanding depth. But things took a different turn when Project New Depth had to do with you not just moving 2D elements back and forth and having the active object masked automatically when it intersects through another object, but then being able to rotate this object. And this makes a lot of sense because the folks at Adobe are leaning towards new technologies that incorporate 2D and 3D, and having the position that they have right now only makes them as confident as it is for them to be able to experiment and try new stuff, as this allows you to transform Gaussian splats in 3D while actually making changes, manipulating, editing. The fact that you can literally work with 3D Gaussian splats like you're working with 2D images, making copies of this, pasting them, changing the hues and saturation, masking, unmasking, and doing all of that Photoshoppy things with them is amazing. So whether you're thinking about having a soft selection of a particular object, or maybe you're thinking about just making copies, twisting, turning, and making some cute and weird designs, this allows you to experiment with 3D Gaussian splat like you would with 2D images. And this is really impressive. Hopefully this makes it to Adobe Stager or Substance Painter, but for what it is, this is really nice and I'm up for it. Last year, the folks at Adobe, they thrilled us with a nice project called Project Scenic. And the idea behind this project is for you to be able to actually use prompts to create any kind of scene that you want, making it very easy for you to go from idea to compositing the scene and bringing that scene to life. Project Scenic made it super easy for you to type in a prompt and generate whatever kind of asset that you like to work with, generate the camera position, and then you can choose to compose this by simply typing in the prompt of how you like the composition to look like. And ultimately, creators will be able to go from idea to creating 3D models and creating the desired kind of renders that they're going for. And the cool thing with this is this has gotten a bit of an upgrade with Project Scene-It. And so Project Scene-It allows you to simply start generating 3D models based off an image. So you can simply load in an image and automatically this generates a 3D model of that image that you like to work with. Of course, you will also find that we have options of generating different environments, accessing asset properties, and of course adding a couple of interesting assets with the asset library. This currently looks like almost a full tool that you can work with, and some other interesting things with this is you can literally describe what you want and hit the render button to get the scene rendered. Furthermore, just like we have with Project Scenic, you can now easily throw in basic 3D primitive objects and use that as placeholders for various elements. And I also believe that this might also come with a generative video tool which might bring a lot more possibilities to creators. And if you're into design or illustrative motion design, then you definitely love Project Motion Map, as Project Motion Map seems to be a tool that might be coming as a variant of Adobe Illustrator. And this project is a context-based project which understands the elements that you've got in your scene, and this allows you to simply select any of the elements based off their layers and define what you like those elements to do. Interestingly, this has a built-in agent which you can literally tell what you want it to do. So in this case, if you like it to simply animate the burger with stacking and text fading in and out, because this understands the layers and also understands what is happening within your canvas, is going to take a look at all of the layers, think about what steps it needs to take to make the animation, come up with some concept, and eventually create the animation. And just like with every generative tool, this offers 3 different variations that you can select from. And one can easily say that with a tool like this, vibe animation might definitely become a thing pretty soon, as all you have to do is either ask it for inspiration, or you can simply click on animate, and this is automatically going to think about what the scene is and generate some animations for you. So just in case you're into web design or motion graphics, this might actually come in super handy for those menial tasks that you might want to do. And speaking about videos, Project CleanTake is one interesting tool that I would love to get my hands on, owing to the fact that most times when you're shooting videos, you do have a lot of takes just to get the right words in, the pitch, inflections, and so on.
Hi, I'm Caroline Colon. I'm a user researcher in my 5th year at Adobe.
So one of the things was the way she said, at Adobe. Traditionally, the only way to fix something like that would be to reshoot it. But now we can just go to the transcript panel, and I can just choose at Adobe, regenerate spoken
You're gonna
words.
make her un-Wisconsinite?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm a user researcher in my 5th year at Adobe.
And in most cases, you might have to re-record just because of some background sound. And with this new project, all of that is now a thing of the past.
The Fremont neighborhood of Seattle, where the Adobe office is located. And the cool thing about this office is where it's located.
You can obviously hear that bell. So what we can do using our new and updated source separation technology is to take the audio from the video and break it up into its individual components directly in the timeline. Well, that bell ringing was actually on the sound effects track, so I can just mute it.
Is located. And the cool thing about this office is where it's located.
No
It's
way.
between Lake Union.
Within the properties, you also have access to the volume adjustment section, which will come in super handy for adjusting any of the audio strips rather than totally muting them out. Another interesting cool feature that this comes with is being able to separate the entire audio and select a specific part which you want to remove and remove it. And just that section that you've selected gets totally erased while the video remains like nothing happened. And in certain cases where there is a copyright audio playing in the background, you can replace that, match the ambience, and get the audio playing exactly how it's originally intended to. And one interesting feature, which is also available with this, is changing how the tone of the speaker is. And with Project CleanTake, changing emotions is as simple as selecting the text within the transcript that you like to change the emotions of, going over to the change emotion, and selecting the particular emotion that you like to drive the audio. And these are amazing features, and I would love to see these as either an independent tool, and of course if it exists in tools like Premiere Pro, this would be a wonderful addition as well. Last year, the folks at Adobe teased Project Supersonic, and this was a prompt-based tool that allows you to simply prompt the kind of audio that you want for your scene, and it automatically understands the scene and generates it. And the cool thing is this year we're seeing Project Soundstager, which is more of an advanced version of Project Supersonic, and this understands what's going on in your scene, analyzes it, processes the entire scene, and generates audios that matches every single scene or cut or actions happening in that scene. And once these analyses are complete, you can simply click on yes, and you would notice that these would automatically start layering the sounds based off the scene and the events that happens in each of the scenes. And you can simply expand this to expose all of the individual audio clips that makes up the audio strip, and you can simply go into any of them, delete them if you want, replace them if you want, and also change how they get to sound. And just like with every generative tool, this also has variations of sounds that you can select from. Another cool thing, which is also pretty interesting with this, is you can select a particular clip and replace the sound by simply prompting that. And this just makes it extremely easy for sound designers or anyone that is thinking about making sounds for their videos to get a head start or a template that they can build from. And this is just here to empower artists to do more. And speaking about artists doing more, the folks at Renderhub are also allowing artists to do more with a ton of cool things that they have currently. And right now, if you're into 3D, 2D, or maybe you're into design, then you might want to consider taking a look at Renderhub. As right here on Renderhub, you'll find 3D assets, 2D assets, references, stock images, brushes and tools, materials, sound effects, and so on. So whether you're looking for free stuff or you're looking for paid stuff, you'll definitely find them right here on Renderhub. More so, they have an interesting gallery that can come in super handy for anyone that is thinking about getting inspired based off previous artworks. You can also explore their learning forum where you'll be able to learn a couple of cool things that deals with tips and tricks, especially if you work with tools like Blender. So whether you're thinking about getting inspired, learning some cool stuff for Blender, or possibly you'd like to download some of the free assets that they have here, or join some amazing forum sessions, then Renderhub is the place for you. And of course, for those who like to take a look at these, you can simply go over to the link in the description that will bring you right here, where you can see all of these for yourself. And of course, a huge shout out to the folks at Renderhub for making this possible. So this is it. The folks at Adobe have released yet another interesting set of projects which are poised to making artists create faster and take full advantage of some interesting generative tools while creating. And I'd love to see some of these make their way to final releases or as features in some of their major tools. And of course, I would like to know which of these ones actually interests you, and if there's anyone that you like the most, I would like to know what it is in the comment section. And until I see you guys in the next one, peace.